Welcome into episode 1 of Got It Covered. I'm Giovanni Heater alongside Raza Umerani. Raza, it's our ACC preview, my friend. Man, I'm so fired up to get this thing going.
Well, more than anything, it's the maiden voyage, and there's no better way to get it started than staying home in the ACC. I got the Tech polo on. You're cused out in the back. Let's just rip off the Band-Aid and get right into it, dude. I'm ready.
I'm ready. Absolutely. Let's give everyone a little bit of our background within the ACC, because I do believe we come into this thing with some credibility. Spent the last 4 years as students down at Virginia Tech, and we were so fortunate and blessed to go everywhere you can think of in the conference. I call Syracuse home. You're from the DC area. We've been to Miami, out to Stanford, Georgia Tech in Atlanta, like literally everywhere in their conference, as far as college football, college basketball, baseball, you name it, we've been there. So this really does, in a lot of ways, feel like home for us, the ACC in particular.
Yeah, I mean, we've been from down at Hard Rock Stadium to up at the Carrier Dome or the JMA Wireless Dome. I'm all for dead naming it. Nobody wants to call it the JMA Wireless Dome, let's be honest. So we've obviously come from experience, but I know that you and I also both grew up watching the ACC. I mean, you being from the Syracuse area, this was your home conference even as a fan. And, I have all my older siblings, and so much of my previous generation's family went to school in the ACC. And so it's always kind of been a part of our lives. And I think that definitely makes it so that we have to start by talking about the ACC. Where else could we possibly start?
Where else could we possibly start? I've said so many times that there have been scenarios where I've chosen to watch Boston College against Pitt instead of whatever great top 10 matchup is going on, just because the ACC felt different, felt like home. And from watching Syracuse predominantly, and then our time at school with Virginia Tech, you just have a different level of familiarity with the teams of the ACC and the traditions and the history. So it might not be everybody's conference, but it's definitely our conference.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather watch on a Saturday afternoon. I'd rather watch North Carolina play against, I guess nowadays it would be SMU, but even if it was like Carolina Duke on a Saturday at 3:30, I'm probably watching that over, Auburn against Georgia. Like I'm dead serious about that too. I'll keep up with the SEC, don't get me wrong, but we've just been so tapped into the ACC forever. It really is home.
And we just lost a ton of viewership from SEC country. No, I'm just kidding.
It's okay.
Let's go ahead and get right into this thing and start by talking overarching storylines in the ACC heading into the 2025 college football season. I feel like you have to start by talking about what happened last year, and that's the fact that Clemson was able to put all the pieces together, get into the ACC championship game, make the most of it, walk-off field goal win over SMU, and get into the college football playoff. Piggybacking off of that, SMU, in its first year in the ACC, makes it to the title game and earns a spot in the college football playoff as well. And in the first season of the 12-team playoff layout, the ACC had 2 teams.
Yeah, I think Clemson had to claw back to get in. I mean, people forget that they started the year obviously getting thwarted by Georgia in that week 1 game, and then kind of had to work their way back. There was a stretch of about 6-7 weeks where Cade Klubnik was the hottest quarterback in America. Then they fall to South Carolina to close out the season. It's like, all right, man, now it's like Clemson's not really going to have a shot to get into the college football playoff. They play with house money in the title game against SMU. SMU almost storms back to win the game, and then that crazy 50-plus yard walk-off field goal for Clemson. They both wind up getting in, but they both wind up losing in the first round. And honestly, Gio, that's what sticks out to me when you talk about what's the big storyline for the conference at large when you get into this season is this the year that the ACC finally gets back to national relevance? Because you go back 2 years ago when Florida State went 13-0 and was left out of the final 4-team playoff. I feel like we're still kind of feeling the effects of that in a way. Because last year when SMU lost to Clemson, what was the big debate on the morning of the selection show? Is SMU going to get in over 9-3 Alabama, who got crushed by teams like Oklahoma, right? Like
we were watching that together.
A problem we're facing. Exactly. And we were holding our breath. I don't think either of us thought SMU was going to get in.
No, I didn't think so.
But they did the right thing. So it's like, okay, we're still feeling the effects of what happened to Florida State 2 years ago. But Clemson is in a position this year where they're going to be a preseason top 5 team. They have a chance to make up for what they did last year in week 1 against Georgia, and we're going to get into that game they have week 1 against LSU, they have a chance to put the ACC back on the map, which Florida State failed to do 2 years ago. Again, not their fault what happened to Jordan Travis and what happened with the selection committee, but they've got a chance to really come back and say the ACC is not to be messed around with, which is hilarious because Clemson doesn't even want to be here anymore. So, take it with a grain of salt, but I think that's what we really have to focus on in 2025 is, can the ACC get back to where it once was?
Where do you stack the ACC in the Power Four conferences? Obviously, it's the SEC and the Big Ten. I think we can all agree, sort of in a league of their own.
Power
but
two,
then
almost.
There's this conversation of the ACC and the Big 12. Where do you put them in that order?
I think it's close. I would probably give the SEC, not the SEC, I'm sorry, the Big 12. Obviously, I'd give the SEC the nudge. I'd probably give the Big 12 the 4 spot. And the reason is, I think at this point, we can all agree Arizona State's probably the title favorite in the Big 12 right now. They're not on that upper level that a team like Clemson or even maybe a Miami is. So when you look at the ACC, it's more top heavy, and it's kind of quality over quantity in that sense, where the teams at the top of the ACC, Clemson, Miami, even your SMU's, Georgia Techs of the world, are better than the one team at the top of the Big 12, which is Arizona State. But they might have a little bit more depth because they've got like 7 or 8 teams that can play in the conference title game. When you look at Kansas State, Iowa State, maybe Colorado figures it out this year. BYU was good last year. TCU, Utah's never to be messed around with. Whereas in the ACC, I think maybe you've got 6 at best, including Clemson and Miami, that can make it to the title game. So I would give it to the ACC just based on the guys up top. The Big 12 is a little deeper, but the ACC is, again, a chance to prove that they're not just Clemson and Miami and a bunch of Joe Schmoes. Like, this is a chance for a lot of big names, a lot of big coaches that are now in the ACC, which we'll get into. They can really bring it around as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I pretty much echo your same thought process there as far as the Big 12 being deeper. I think you're going to see a resurgence in a program like Texas Tech with the money that's being invested at some of those schools in the Big 12. I do think that their long-term scenarios could play out to be more impressive than the ACC's, especially if you see a situation where Clemson or Miami or North Carolina or Florida State start joining other conferences. The SEC is what that situation would be. But for the time being, I think the ACC does hold that 3 spot, and it really is a year-to-year, case-to-case basis. Let's go ahead and take a look at the ACC preseason media poll before we discuss our picks for the ACC this year. And this is how it plays out in the opinion of the nation. Clemson, Miami, SMU, Georgia Tech, Louisville. There's kind of a top 5, and then there's a middle grouping, and then there's the bottom. You got Duke and Florida State 6 and 7, Carolina 8, Pittsburgh 9, and then NC State, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, BC, Virginia, Cal, Wake, and Stanford. Anything there, Raza, surprise you?
I wouldn't say I'm surprised by anything. I will say, when I saw the release, the thing that surprised me the most was Virginia Tech receiving a first place vote. I don't know who did it.
I did see
I
that.
do not know who did it.
And it was not any of our people because we asked.
No, I asked every single person I know that was there that filled out a ballot. If it wasn't you, who was it? And nobody can seem to figure it out. So God bless you, whoever that one person is. I hope that you get the help that you need, because Virginia Tech is not going to finish first or anywhere close to first. But honestly, in the rankings, what stands out to me was probably 2 things. Honestly, I'm looking so intently at 2 teams this year. One is Florida State. Like, it just can't possibly be worse or even like it was last year. They've undergone such a roster turnover. Obviously, last year it had to have been, contextually speaking, the worst season Florida State has ever had in program history. The media says that they finished 7th. They got 4 first place votes. I don't think they're going to finish in first place either, but I think that's fair. The question for me is, like, if they don't finish in the top 5, how bad can it be? Can it be as bad as it was last year? And then I actually was surprised to see North Carolina in the top half of the league. I guess that is the Bill Belichick effect, but when I look at a team like Pitt or I look at a team like NC State, simply based on the quarterback position, you could even make the argument for Virginia Tech. I have a little bit more faith in those rosters because I know what I'm going to get. We have zero idea what Bill Belichick and North Carolina are going to look like, whereas we have a pretty good understanding of what a team like Pitt or Virginia Tech is going to be. So I was kind of surprised to see Carolina that high, but I honestly think this is a pretty good media poll. I often have problems with it, but this one they did a good job.
All right. Walk us through your ACC preseason predictions here.
So I'm a little chalky. Honestly, you look at me versus the media. We have the exact same top 7. So I like how I was just like, maybe they could do this, do that. And we have the exact same top 7. I do have Clemson and Miami facing off for the title. I do think Clemson goes undefeated this year. They win the ACC this year. They go 13-0, 9-0 in conference. They should be a top 2 or 3 seed in the college football playoff, all things considered. And we'll get into them in a little bit. But as you go down the line here, where I try to kind of differentiate from the media is the middle and the bottom. Like you'll notice I have North Carolina at 11. Again, we just don't know what they're going to be. I have Pitt at 8. That is entirely because of Eli Holstein. I think he's a really, really good player. People forget Pitt was 7-0 last year.
That's right.
And then finished to year 7 and 6. So like we saw the epic highs and lows. It was really after Eli Holstein got hurt. If we see a full season of healthy Eli Holstein, I think it's very possible that Pitt could make a run towards the top 5 of the league. You also might notice I have Virginia Tech lower than the media does. I have them at 12 instead of 11. Maybe Tech would have been 12th if they didn't receive a first place vote. But I think this is a season in Blacksburg that's going to be very telling, and the schedule's not easy. They've got some tough non-conference games. The bottom is pretty easy to sort through. I feel like we all agree Virginia, Boston College, Cal, Wake, and Stanford are going to be that bottom 5. But I don't really know what to expect from the middle. We know who's going to be at the top. We know who's going to be at the bottom. And, I would love to ask you, what does the middle look like for you? Because everybody seems to have a different opinion.
Yeah, let me go ahead and walk you through my preseason predictions in the ACC. We agree on Clemson at the top. I think that's the consensus first place. I have Georgia Tech at the 2. And the reason I have Georgia Tech at the 2 is because of what Brent Key has been able to do down in Atlanta, rejuvenating that program. And I also just think that the way their schedule stacks up, if they can stay healthy, and we're going to get into it, but if Haynes King and this Yellow Jackets team can stay healthy, I think things can stack up in their favor. I have Miami right there at the 3, and really 2 and 3 are pretty interchangeable for me. I have Louisville at the 4. I'm really high on Louisville. I think what Jeff Brom has done for his alma mater is really sensational. I like what they have at quarterback in Miller Moss. I think that they have probably the best 1-2 punch at tailback in the conference. I think that Brown is an absolute dog in the backfield, and he's only going into his sophomore season. So exciting to see how that plays out. I have SMU at the 5. I got to tell you, and we're going to get into, going team by team here. I'm really not that high on SMU. I could see a serious scenario where they get a little bit of a wake-up call because of how favorable their schedule was last year. They pretty much dodged every bullet. No, I'm not taking anything away from them. What Rhett Lashley has done, what Kevin Jennings has done at quarterback, it's impressive. Don't get me wrong. But they just were able to escape a couple of tight games, and then they didn't really have to play some of the ACC's best last year en route to the ACC championship game. They gave Clemson a great fight. I think Clemson's team this year is a lot better than last year's team. And then when they played one of the big boys at Penn State in the playoff, things really unraveled. So I'm just not super high on SMU. I have Virginia Tech at the 6. And this is all, by the way, like we picked game by game, and there's a formula behind this. This isn't like we're just throwing names at a dartboard. I have Virginia Tech at the 6. I really think that their ACC schedule is fairly favorable. Duke at the 7, really high on Duke. Florida State, Syracuse. I'd love to see Syracuse bust out another 10-win season, but I think they have one of the hardest schedules in college football this year. North Carolina, NC State, Pittsburgh. I have Pittsburgh a little bit lower than you did myself. Virginia, Boston College, Cal, Wake, and then Stanford I have going winless. Raza, I'm curious, though, Who do you have, like, as far as, okay, we know how they stack up in the ACC. Who do you have being like a 9-3 versus a 10-2? Who do you have winning 7 games, 8 games, going 6-6? Like, I have Clemson at 12-0. 12-0.
Yeah, me
I
too.
think they run the table. I think they beat LSU in the opener. I have
I agree.
Georgia Tech somehow at 10-2. And I really tried to find another loss, and I struggled to. I think their only losses are going to be Clemson, week 3, and then Georgia. I'm just curious to see who you had having maybe good years, but didn't stack up as well in conference play.
Yeah, so I have Miami at 9-3 versus SMU at 10-2. The difference is that I have Miami losing only 1 game within the ACC itself. Obviously, they have the tough non-conference games against Florida. That's just not exactly conducive for Miami in that particular way. I do think SMU will probably be better within the ACC itself because, again, their schedule is nothing crazy. And let's be honest, this is a very similar SMU team to the one we saw last year between Kevin Jennings and all the weapons they have on offense and a lot of guys that they still have on defense. So Miami, worse record, but better conference record to get to the title game. Georgia Tech and Louisville, I both have winning 9 games. Louisville, I have at 5-3 in the ACC, and Georgia Tech at 6-2. I do agree with you that when you look at Georgia Tech's schedule, it's kind of hard to see the other losses. I do have them slipping up at NC State late in the year because it's one of those places that is so hard when you're a ranked team going into a place like NC State and they're throwing the kitchen sink at you, trying to throw you off. It can really have a factor. So that's just one of those games I see an upset happening. I think their week 1 game against Colorado in the opener is going to tell us a lot about what this Georgia Tech team is going to be, because by all means, they should win pretty comfortably. You know, it's one of those games that reminds me of last year, Virginia Tech against Vanderbilt. Now, I don't want to compare Vanderbilt to Colorado, but it's in the sense that, like, okay, you're expected to come in and kind of push this team around. If you get worked a little bit, but still win, okay, then it's like we've got some room to work with. If you're like Tech last year and you go in and lose that game, that could set the tone for the rest of the year. And I really feel like that's what happened last year with the Hokies. I have Duke as an 8-win team. Again, I'm pretty high on Duke as well. Listen, Manny Diaz can coach. They can coach the heck out of he can coach the heck out of a defense. And I really think, again, we'll get into them more specifically later, but they've got some juice now at the quarterback position, and their defense should still be really good. Then you get to the wall of 7-win, 6-win teams, right? So 7-5, I got Florida State, Pitt, and NC State. 6-6, I have Syracuse and Carolina. Then I have both Virginia squads going 5-7. BC, Cal, and Wake go 4-8. Stanford goes 3-9. I did give Stanford 1 win in the ACC against Cal because why not? It's rivalry week. Anything can happen. But that's the way I see it shaking out. And I feel pretty comfortable with that. But the problem is with this conference year over year, like anything can happen. You compare last year's preseason to this year's preseason, it's so different up and down. So you really never know.
You saw Arizona State be picked to finish last in the Big 12, and here they are playing Texas in the Cotton Bowl with a chance to go to the playoff semifinal Big 12 champs. So you never know in this modern era.
Or Florida State picked to win they were 13-0 the year before, picked to win the conference, shooing for the college football playoff. They had literally the worst year ever. So you just
2 wins. 2 wins.
It's unbelievable.
I went Clemson 12-0, like I said, Georgia Tech 10-2, Miami 9-3, Louisville 10-2, but 6-2 in ACC play, so they get that 4 spot. SMU 9-3, somehow Virginia Tech 8-4. I guess the biases are playing in, but we'll talk about the Hokies. Duke 8-4, Florida State 7-5, 7-5. Carolina 6-6, NC State 6-6, Pitt 6-6, Virginia 6-6, BC 4-8, Cal 4-8. Wake 4-8, Stanford 2-10. All right,
dang,
yeah. It's rough. But Stanford's got a tough non-conference too, though.
Dude, they do. I mean, they have to play like Notre Dame. You know, it's definitely not easy. They always have
go open at Hawaii, like that. Traveling across the Pacific's not necessarily easy.
No,
not that Hawaii's terrific or anything, but
never. But it's a difficult road trip.
Yeah, it is. All right, let's give a segment here that's elevator pitches for each team. We're just going to go team by team, a quick 2-minute elevator pitch for each ACC team. And I think it'd be pretty fun to start at the top with the Clemson Tigers. What you got?
Well, I don't need 2 minutes to talk about Clemson. I have 2 words for you. Honestly, it's one word with a hyphen in the middle. Super team. When I look at Clemson, I just see a super team between Cade Klubnik at quarterback. Listen, everybody they brought back. We know Clemson's not a transfer, portal heavy team. Think about everybody they brought back that could have gone pro, could have been a first round pick, right? Cade Klubnik at quarterback. They got Brian Wesco, who was a star freshman receiver last year. TJ Moore and Antonio Williams, elite wide receivers. Then you go to the defensive side of the ball. This defensive line is just as good as the one that we saw win the national championship in 2019 between Peter Woods, who's going to be a top 5 pick, TJ Parker, who's going to be a first round pick, Avion Terrell, the brother of AJ Terrell, who could be a first round pick. Ashton Hampton came on strong last year as a really strong corner as well. They've just got dudes, like NFL bodies at every single position on the field. And then they've got this star freshman from my home state of Virginia, Gideon Davidson from the Lynchburg area. He could really emerge as maybe the best back in the ACC in year one. The kid's got crazy talent. They did have Phil Maffa last year, but he was more of a bruiser. I think Davidson gives them more of an explosive element in the run game. And if you add that to this team that's already elite at everything else on both sides of the ball, you've got a recipe for a real national championship contender.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think Cade Klubnik, we saw him have huge growth last year. I think he takes it to another level. Serious Heisman Trophy contender. You hit the nail on the head with Gideon Davidson. I think you're looking at the next Travis Etienne type running back out of Clemson, CJ Spiller. Like, he fits that bill, right? And he's wearing number 9, which Travis Etienne also wore. So
I actually didn't know
be on the lookout for, I think they have an elite defense. We had this conversation kind of off the air. You felt like Ohio State or Texas had the best wide receiver room in the country. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think Clemson is in that conversation when you look at Antonio Williams, Brian Wesco, TJ Moore. I think Ohio State has a better one in Jeremiah Smith. There's no better wide receiver in the country.
He's the one.
I think Texas, yes. I think Texas might have a better one. But I think as far as wide receiver depth goes, I like Clemson with anybody, particularly with their top 3. The front 7 on defense, absolutely loaded. Peter Woods, I think it's going to be huge the way he's going to slide back into the tackle spot. It's going to allow him to play so much more free, and the rhythm of that front 7 is just going to be on a different level. And then obviously TJ Parker, 11 sacks last year, almost had 20 tackles for loss. He's a dog. Here's a name to look out for. Alabama transfer Jeremiah Alexander at linebacker. He's going to be a stud in the middle of that defense. And then Tom Allen, the new defensive coordinator, who they poached from Penn State. So huge.
Right. Yeah, I think that honestly is such a big factor in this. Is like, yes, Clemson had the defensive talent last year, but they often had a lot of defensive shortcomings. Really, it was like timing that was such a problem with them. Obviously, Georgia waxed them, but they completely blew that game late against South Carolina, and they damn near blew it against SMU in the title game as well. Tom Allen is an absolute psychopath. He brings so much energy on the sideline. If you guys remember the season he had, like with Michael Penix at Indiana, which seems like a lifetime ago now.
It does.
He brings the type of energy that I think they lacked previously. They've been trying to find that true Brent Venables successor, and I think Tom Allen really gives them that shot. So, the talent they have on both sides of the ball, they don't have an excuse to lose a single game this year, which is saying something because the schedule certainly ain't easy.
No, schedule is not easy. Taking a peek at it right here. You open against LSU. This doesn't really matter. Like, they could lose this game and it's going to be okay.
That's
especially
true.
because it's not a conference game. I think, one, they'd love to win it. And it matters in this sense, Raza. It matters for the ACC. In fact, all of week 1 matters tremendously for the ACC. Syracuse is going to play Tennessee. Virginia Tech's going to play South Carolina. Clemson's going to play LSU. And you keep going down the list. There's a ton of week 1 ACC, SEC matchups that are going to take place in week 1. North Carolina, TCU as well, even though that's not a SEC matchup. There's so many opportunities. Florida State, Alabama. There's so many opportunities for the ACC to show like, hey, we're still here. And
exactly.
Can I give you a reason? If they don't. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can I give you a reason why LSU Clemson matters?
Yeah. 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 Death Valley.
Winner gets Death Valley rights.
Yes.
Now, granted, the game is in Clemson, right? They run it back next year in
Right.
Baton Rouge. So, but like for the time being, maybe the series determines who gets Death Valley. But like I've always said, LSU's got the real Death Valley. LSU's got the real Tiger Rag. They've got the better stadium. All these other things.
I've
I
said that
would
about
love for
Clemson.
Clemson to prove it wrong. I'd love
Yeah.
for Clemson to prove me wrong. Like, and I think LSU's great, by the way. I'm sure we're going to talk about them at some point in the future. I think
Yeah.
LSU's a real contender for really, really big things this year. I'd like Clemson to win that opener. And
I
it's
do
more
too.
than just a Death Valley thing, right? Like they need that win to set the tone for their season and make up for what they did not do last year against Georgia. That they cannot afford to have that happen again.
You know when that game would have meant so much more is before the 12-team playoff, like the
I was going
BCS,
to say like 2 years ago.
Well, yeah, even the 14 playoff, because there was so much less room for error. But now you can go 9-3, particularly with a schedule like Clemson's. You can go 9-3 and still get into the playoff, and you're really not sweating on Selection Sunday. So that's the only reason I say it doesn't matter. Like it matters, but their season's not over if they lose week 1.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw that play out. I mean, you look at a team like Ohio State last year, they lost twice in the regular season. It didn't matter,
Yeah.
and those are both conference games. This isn't even a conference game. So
yeah,
in this day and age, there's so much more margin for error, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. But neither side will be super deterred by a loss on paper, but it's really in the finer print that it matters a lot more.
Let's talk about the Miami Hurricanes right here. Last year, they went 10-2, 6-2 in ACC play. And Raza, a situation where the Canes were so close, yet so far at the same time, right?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's really 10-2 with an asterisk.
Sure.
But I won't get into all that. But you're right. I mean, they were hanging on by a thread all year because their defense was just awful. And they got away with it so many times, right? Against Duke or against Cal, where they had to come back at 2 a.m. On the East Coast. Like they got away with it until they couldn't. And then eventually Georgia Tech and Syracuse made them pay for it. They missed out on the title game. They missed out on the playoff, all this stuff, which is a shame because Cam Ward was absolutely electrifying. When I look at Miami this year, it's like the team that they wish they had last year, minus the quarterback position. Now, I want to give props to Carson Beck. He's a talented player. We've seen his high highs at Georgia. We also saw his low lows at Georgia. And I think that last year was a year where he could have solidified himself as a first-round pick in the draft. If you went back in time 12 months and told Carson Beck he'd be practicing in Miami Gardens right now, he probably would not like it unless it was for the Miami Dolphins. But here he is playing for the Hurricanes. I do think it's better for him, though, because the team around him is actually pretty solid. I mean, Miami's got blue chip talent at so many positions. You got 2 guys that'll probably go in the top 10 in the tackle Maui Goa and then Ruben Bain coming off the edge, the linebacker. Their defense is probably going to be better than it was last year. Let's be honest, the bar is incredibly low for that. If they're just able to get better production out of their defense, Carson Beck should be able to do the rest. Because also, this ain't the SEC, right? Miami does have a tough schedule, but he's not going to be facing SEC talent every week for what it's worth. So again, I think this is a team that Miami would have liked to have had last year if Cam Ward was still here. And I just think that puts a bit of a ceiling on them, whereas Cam Ward could have taken them higher.
Cam Ward's situation reminds me so much of Jaden Daniels at LSU, where the defense unfortunately fails this elite high-level quarterback, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Jaden Daniels' scenario, Heisman finalist in Cam Ward's situation, who goes on to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And yet this is a team sport and they're held back by the fact that the defense can't get the job done. I do think that Miami has taken strides in improving on the defensive side of the football. I'm curious to see also how healthy Carson Beck is coming into this year. I mean, that was a pretty gruesome injury. They're saying and they're writing and they're promoting that he's going to be good to go week 1. I mean, we're going to see. We're going to find out. Is he going to play? Sure, of course he's going to play, but is he going to be back to the guy that we were talking about before a little bit of a down year at Georgia. People were talking about him as a top 5 pick and the Heisman Trophy betting odds favorite heading into last season. I mean, that's quite the turn. Do you think that it was all on him? Or I'm kind of under the belief, too, it's a situation where the receiver room wasn't great last year, and that Georgia team maybe didn't help him out as much as he could have used.
I mean, we did see them still wind up winning the SEC. It definitely was a down year for Georgia. The SEC was just a gauntlet last year. That should not get lost in translation here. I think it was a combination of the fact that he didn't have Brock Bowers anymore. He didn't have Ladd McConkey anymore. But he also didn't do himself any favors. There were a lot of games. The Ole Miss game jumps out in particular as a real struggle bus. They were extremely, extremely lucky to have beaten Georgia Tech in the last week of the year. People always remember the 8 overtimes, but they forget the fact that it was a 14-point game with like 3 minutes left. And it was a touchdown to even force overtime in the first place. So it was a combination of those two factors for sure. I would lean more quarterback play because we did see them win the SEC even when Gunnar Stockton had to come in and win them the game.
True.
Not that they would have made a lot of noise in the college football playoff, but it's a chance for Beck to kind of get back on track. If we can see the Carson Beck of 2023 instead of the Carson Beck of 2024, Miami's got a real shot to give Clemson a run for their money.
We saw Gunnar Stockton go through a car crash at the
was
goal line.
Insane. Yeah, Carson Beck actually had the handoff for the run that won them the championship game. People forget that. That was wild. It was ridiculous.
Another big note on Miami. Corey Heatherman is the brand new defensive coordinator. We know that the defense was a big problem last year, so that could be a big kind of slew into this thing if you're the Hurricanes' new defensive coordinator. Let's look at Miami's schedule briefly here. You start the season with a banger. This is another one in that conversation of, can the ACC prove something week 1? And it sets things up for the entire year. Notre Dame right off the top. And you get them at Hard Rock Stadium. This reminds me of that Catholics versus Convicts. Is Miami back 2017 game?
Yep.
Awesome. Chills. I've never seen Hard Rock Stadium that packed and that energetic. We get that week 1 with Notre Dame in town, who's coming fresh off the heels of a national title appearance. And then something that literally drops my jaw, Raza. The Miami Hurricanes don't leave the state of Florida until November 1st when they play in Dallas at SMU.
That's insane.
How does that happen?
Having 2 bye weeks and 1 road game in the first 2 months of the season is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. I mean, and the fact that you get Notre Dame and Florida at home as well, it's just crazy. And it is wild how this has turned out. And then you have, 8 home games versus 4 road games in general. So they're in a position where they're going to be able to physically withstand a lot of this from a wear and tear travel standpoint. But Notre Dame and Florida in the first 4 weeks of the year, I mean, Miami's staring down the barrel of a 2-2 start, because we also know that, yes, Hard Rock was awesome in that game back in 2017 where they put a whooping on Notre Dame. But Notre Dame is coming into this year with real national title expectations. Do not be surprised if the Irish fans outnumbered the Canes fans in Miami that night. And then the Florida game could go either way. Obviously, they whooped Florida last year, but Cam Ward's not here anymore. And DJ Lagway is now the quarterback for Florida. He was not the starting quarterback in that game. So a 2-2 start is really, really on the table here. And then again, yeah, they don't leave the state of Florida, but Louisville is a very tough opponent coming in on October 17th. So I think a hot start, because of the fortuitous bounce of all of this scheduling stuff, is imperative for Miami if they're not 2-2 to start the year. If they're 3-1 or 4-0, then they're really cooking with grease, in my opinion.
I think even if they start 2-2, they very much so could still finish 9-3.
Yeah, I mean, those are conference games.
Super again, on the table. Point. Yeah, I see losses against Notre Dame, Florida, and I'm trying to remember what I picked that third loss as. I want to say it was Louisville. I thought it was Louisville comes into their place and beats them. I think you got to look out for, Miami's known for kind of crumbling late in the season.
Exactly.
And they go at Virginia Tech and at Pitt to finish.
Those aren't
It gets
easy
a little
places to play.
chilly. It
And
gets a little chilly.
freezing. It's going to be freezing in both of those games, and they're not easy places to play, particularly Virginia Tech. I did not pick Virginia Tech to win that game. It would not shock me in the least bit if the Hokies managed to pull that one out. It wouldn't shock me at all.
All right. We said these were going to be elevator pitches. We gotta briefing these up a little bit. But I think we
Well,
talked about
there's a lot less to talk about with the guys at the bottom.
with some of these teams, no doubt. Louisville. Let's talk elevator pitch on Louisville right now. Last year, 8-4, 5-3 in ACC play. This year's over/under win total set at 8.5 for Jeff Brom and the boys. I like the number. I like Louisville to have a pretty solid season. Remember, I have Louisville at 10-2, but 6-2 in ACC play. What's the elevator pitch on the Cards? I think Tyler Shuck shined last season.
Right.
Brom showed that he's a great quarterbacks coach. Now he's going to start for the New Orleans Saints. I don't think that was on many people's bingo card, but it's real. You bring in Miller Moss from USC. At Miller Moss's best, we saw flashes of brilliance, particularly some of the plays that he made in that LSU season opener in Vegas last year. You saw him score 6 touchdowns in the 2023 Holiday Bowl. You know, there are flashes in the pan for Miller Moss. Can he put it all together? I think he has the perfect coach to help him do that. That being said, Lincoln Riley's a quarterback guru as well.
Right.
So there's two sides to every coin, and every situation is different. I love what they have in Chris Bell and Colin Lacey in the wide receiver room. In their running back room, I think it's the best running back room in the ACC. Isaac Brown, ACC Rookie of the Year last year, had over 1,100 yards, 11 touchdowns. And then you got Duke Watson. It's a great 1-2 punch. They complement each other very well. Their defense, strong at linebacker. They have a lot returning on the defensive side of the ball in the linebacker spot, but they lost a lot in the secondary. So curious to see how all that plays out. Fairly difficult schedule. They have the luxury that Miami does with 8 home games, 4 road games. I think that's preposterous. I've always grown up with 6-6. Maybe a neutral site game against Notre Dame at like Yankee Stadium or something. But
exactly.
I'm pretty used to 6-6, but they have 8 home, 4 away. I think it's going to come down to, for Louisville, can the defense hold its weight? Because I think you're looking at one of the more prolific offenses in the ACC.
Yeah, honestly, when I think of Louisville in a nutshell, it's just electrifying offense. I think Miller Moss is probably the best quarterback they've had since Lamar Jackson. That's nothing against what Tyler Shuck did last year. Obviously, he was great and he flashed a lot of upside, especially as a pro prospect. But Miller Moss, like you said, brings some really, really high level production from his time at USC. I mean, in a lot of big spots as well. Like last year, he dazzled against a team like Michigan, and he played really well in a lot of their Big Ten games. Like he held his own against Penn State as well. USC easily could have won each of those games, but their defense wound up blowing it late both times. So I'm really high on Miller Moss. I think that was a great addition for them. I'm glad you mentioned Chris Bell, because last year, obviously, they had Ja'Cory Brooks come in from Alabama, and he was Shuck's #1 target. And he was very, very prolific statistically. A lot of people forget what Ja'Cory Brooks brought to that Louisville offense last year. Now Chris Bell takes the step up and becomes their wide receiver 1. If him and Miller Moss are able to connect like this, their pass game can be electrifying, because like you said, that running back duo of Brown and Watson is going to keep defenses honest. If Miller Moss and Chris Bell can take the top off of defenses in the ACC, they could have the #1 passing offense in the league, even with, Clemson having all the talent that they do as well. So when I think of Louisville, it's really offense. I think they have a chance to be the best offense in the league. It wouldn't shock me if that's the case. And that's definitely good enough to get them in the top 5. And if they're able to win some of these big games against the bigger opponents on their schedule, they could be wind up playing for the ACC championship.
Real quick, let's peek at that Louisville schedule here. Eastern Kentucky to start. James Madison, that's an interesting one that they're going to play in Louisville. Bowling Green, they go to Pittsburgh. They get Virginia at home. You don't love that they have 2 byes in, the first, 7 weeks of the season. Then you go at Miami, Boston College, at Virginia Tech, Cal, Clemson, at SMU. I mean, dude, this schedule is really not terrible outside of at Miami, At Virginia Tech, okay. Clemson's going to be a tough one. At SMU's a tough one. I just think in the non-conference, it certainly could be a lot worse. The non-conference is not bad at all.
No, I think the conference schedule, you kind of get the epic highs and lows of the ACC. Like you're like, oh man, we got to go to Miami. We got to host Clemson. Going to Virginia Tech's never easy. We got to go to SMU, who was undefeated in the conference last year. But then on the flip side, it's like, oh, a home game against Virginia, a home game against BC, a home game against Cal. So you have games that should be like shoe-in victories, but then these other games against the top dogs in the ACC could really go either way. They're going to need to win probably at least 2 of those games, whether again against Miami, Clemson, SMU, and Virginia Tech. I guess Virginia Tech and SMU are the easier ones there, but both of those are not easy places to play. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out in the second half of the season. All things considered, Louisville should be undefeated going into that game against Miami coming off their second bye week. I think that is really where we're going to learn, where does SMU, or rather Louisville, stand up against all these other top dogs in the ACC. It should be interesting to watch it play out.
By the way, I think Louisville has the best vibes and most underrated vibes, maybe not best, but underrated vibes of any college football program in the entire country. The Heisman logo at midfield, the Louisville
so
uniforms, there's not a bad combination in that equipment room. I mean, they're so serious
tricky.
aura.
Yeah,
and
they've
Lamar
got a nice
Jackson
stadium.
Gave them a lot of that. As far as when you had you can't have a Heisman logo at midfield unless you've had one. But when you've had a Heisman Trophy winner in the last 12 years, you can have that.
Yeah, and especially if it's Action Jackson, Mr. Lamar himself in the flesh. He's obviously
big trust.
Big trust. Obviously, he brought so much juice to that program. If Miller Moss can bring that same type of juice in a different way, obviously nobody's Lamar Jackson. It's honestly stunning to look back and see what Lamar did with a roster that was pretty subpar. He's like the only NFL player on that offense. But I do think Louisville, between the drip and between the aura and between the vibes and between the offensive talent, they should be in for a very big 2025. Anything less than, I think, 8 wins would be a total disappointment based on the talent they have.
Couldn't agree with you more. What you know about Jamari Staples, though? That was a talented team. That was a good wide receiver.
they've got a good lineage of players, and like Ja'Cory Brooks could, for a guy who was only there for 1 year, could wind up being a solid player in the NFL. I mean, he was undrafted free agent, but could make an NFL roster and could listen. If you come from Alabama, you got to have talent. So I am going to miss the winged shoulder uniforms, though. That's for darn sure.
Yes, no doubt about it. All right, let's talk about the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets now. This is the team that, again, I picked to finish second in the ACC. 7-5 last year, 5-3 in ACC play. Huge part of that was the fact that Haynes King was banged up, missed games throughout the season, is able to come back and finish the season fairly strong. Over-under win total is set at 7.5. Dude, I think that's a bargain.
I don't disagree. I mean, they won 7 games last year dealing with quarterback injuries out the wazoo. I mean, I remember, I'm sure you do too, them coming to Blacksburg last year and shuffling between these backup quarterbacks. They weren't able to put the ball in the end zone that day, and they just looked lost and confused at the quarterback position. If Haynes King stays healthy, that all goes out the window. When we saw how good they could have been, obviously the Florida State win did not mean as much as we thought it did in the moment. But again, they really should have beat Georgia in that season finale. They played all these really good teams, really close. They have a ton of returning talent from that team last year. They're replacing Eric Singleton with Eric Rivers. Yes. Upgrade or downgrade, it remains to be seen. Obviously, Eric Singleton was an incredible wide receiver. Eric Rivers should be just as good, though. This guy is an absolute stud. You put the ball in his hands, just get the popcorn out and watch what happens. That guy is an absolute stud. And then Jamal Haynes is back, too. He could be the best back in the ACC. I think going into this season, it's a pretty fair assumption to say that he's the incumbent best back in the ACC. Like, between the guys that they brought back on both sides of the ball, the new addition in Eric Rivers, who gives them another level of explosiveness at the second level, and the fact that Brent Key can coach his tail off, you got a recipe for a team that can win at least 8 games. I don't disagree with you. I think 7.5 is a number that's too low. Schedule's tough, especially when you got to play Georgia at the end of the season, but it's very manageable in the ACC. And I think this is a team that's just too talented to go 7-5 again if they stay healthy.
I think this game that you're looking at right now opened a lot of people's eyes on the national level as to what Georgia Tech can bring to the table. And what an unbelievable game to watch that was. Joe Tessitore on the call.
Yeah,
Athens
it's
was
great
rocking.
and 8. Yeah.
It's great in 8. Yeah, no, absolutely electric. One thing that I think with Georgia Tech, I'm so big on coaches, right? Because I think one thing we learned in our time at Virginia Tech is how important particularly coordinators can be.
Right.
And there's a new defensive coordinator in Blake Gideon at Georgia Tech. I love the hire. He was the safeties coach at Texas, comes from Coach Sarkisian's staff, has an opportunity now to call plays at Georgia Tech, and totally fits the mold of we're going to go out and hit you. And you know that Brent Key brand of tough, physical, run you into the ground on offense and play tough physical defense on that side of the ball. And that's what he's going to bring to this defensive unit for the Yellow Jackets. I love the hire. I do. I think it's fantastic. And I think that Georgia Tech's going to see a lot of success this year.
Yeah, it really is a matter of health, because without Haynes King, the offense just can't function. We saw that happen last year, regardless of how good their wide receivers can be, regardless of how good Jamal Haynes can be. So hopefully, we're praying for Haynes King health, because if he's able to stay on the field, the sky's the limit for this team. I know you have them making it to the championship game. I definitely think that's on the table if they're just able to stay on the field and able to win some key games along the way.
Briefly, here is the Georgia Tech schedule at Colorado to open up, like we had mentioned. Week 3, Clemson. You get them at home, though. I mean, you could flip the conference on its head if somehow you win that game if you're Georgia Tech. I do have Clemson beating the Yellow Jackets there. Again, I have them running the table and winning the whole thing 12-0. And we'll get into our college football playoffs, but I think they're going to make some serious noise there as well. Temple at Wake, Virginia Tech, you get them at home, at Duke. That's a sneaky tough game at Duke, not because of the atmosphere, but because I think Duke's going to be a good ball club. You get Syracuse at home. They're probably going to want a little bit of revenge there. It was a tough loss with drama, I think is a fair way to put it, between Georgia Tech and Syracuse a season ago. At NC State, definitely not an easy game. At BC, Pitt, and then you end with Georgia. I just think it could be worse. You avoided SMU. You don't play Florida State. You don't play Miami, and you don't play Louisville. Could have been worse for Georgia Tech. You do have to play Clemson, but you get them at home. And other than that, there's not a single place they go to. I think their toughest road atmosphere, probably Colorado, but I think you could argue it's going to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium against Georgia.
Yeah, it's a good point. First of all, it's a travesty that game is being played at a neutral site. Can I just say,
I know
rivalry games should never, ever, ever, ever be played at a neutral site. Arthur Blank, I got respect for you. Your stadium is beautiful. I'm planning on visiting it very soon. We're never doing this. We just cannot be doing this. But you're right. Like, honestly, the hardest true road environment they have is probably NC State, where I have them dropping that second conference game. But that's a very, very winnable game. So many of those difficult games are at home for them, particularly Clemson. If they can get past Colorado, who might be a little sneaky to start the year, they got a real shot to knock off Clemson. And then the rest of the ACC schedule is extremely manageable. I think 8 wins should be the floor for this one.
All right. The SMU Mustangs, cakewalk of a schedule last year in comparison to what they are going to face this year and what a lot of other teams face in the ACC. 11-1, 8-0. Over under win total this year, I think it's pretty appropriate. Actually, I think it's a really good line at 8.5. Kevin Jennings is back. He was impressive last year as a playmaker, no doubt about it. Rhett Lashley, very impressive as a young head coach. I think they have what is the right word? All of the resources you could possibly need is what I'm getting at to succeed at a place like SMU.
Yeah,
maybe an embarrassment of riches is the right way to go about it. Watch out for the tight end, RJ Maryland. He was hurt at the midway point of last season. He's back. He could be an all-conference type candidate tight end. Defense was really strong last year, best in the ACC against the run. They're going to have some new faces. Can they hold that up, that stature of having an elite run defense? Offensive line stays mostly intact with some portal additions as well. So there isn't a ton of turnover for SMU. I think the big thing is they're going to have to limit the turnovers this year. They were plagued by some turnovers heavily in certain games last season, had a 6-turnover game later on in the year. And there was a handful of games where they kind of got by the skin of their teeth. Can they improve upon the turnovers this year? Second year for Kevin Jennings, an opportunity to get more comfortable. He can play free. That's his game, right? But can you play a controlled free? And I think that's what they're looking for. And I just think with the schedule, they could face a little bit of a reality check this year. Still a great year, still a very solid year, but miss out on the ACC championship in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, they return a ton of elite talent across the board. Kevin Jennings, despite his size and despite what we saw against Penn State, he is a playmaker. He's a little small, but that plays into his hands when he's able to, get past the line of scrimmage and make some defenders miss. He's obviously a very good player. We saw it happen last year. They did a pretty good job in the portal as well, maybe improving in some areas where last year they might have been a little bit more deficient. But just because of last year's ACC schedule being such, like you said, a cakewalk, I think a regression to the mean is in order for this team. It's not necessarily about Rhett Lashley as a coach because he's great, or Kevin Jennings as a quarterback because he's great. It's just because the schedule is not what it was last year. It's not going to be that ever again. And you're going to have to, for no pun intended, pony up and beat some of these big dogs. And until we see them beat a big dog, because I remember last year, we thought Florida State was a big win for them. That was not the case. We thought Pitt was a big win for them. That was not the case. They're going to actually have to get it done this year. So it's kind of, I won't believe it till I see it, but they're good enough to beat the teams that they should beat. And that's going to be good enough for at least 8 wins again this year, I think.
I'm with you. Let's take a look at the SMU schedule here. They'll open up the season against East Texas A&M on August 30th. Baylor, that's an interesting non-conference opponent in week 2. They'll go to TCU as well. And then in the ACC schedule, Syracuse could be an interesting game. They get them at home. Stanford at home. They go to Clemson. They go to Wake. They get Miami at home. And then they host Louisville later on. So really, you're not dodging any bullets here. You play at Clemson and you host Miami and Louisville. And then, Syracuse was a 10-win team last year, and we're going to get into talking about them. But this schedule is definitely far from easy for the Mustangs.
Yeah, at Clemson stands out. Miami stands out. They got to play Louisville. That Baylor game's a little tricky. Baylor's a team in the Big 12 that a lot of people are pushing their chips in the center of the table for. I couldn't exactly tell you why, but they are one of those teams. And, these guys is a good coach. Listen, and the other thing is, this is such a coaching cliche, but when you play these games within your own state, right, especially a place like Texas, you've got Texas high school guys going against Texas high school guys. And as they said in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, anything goes. You can push everything else off the table. Anybody can beat anybody in a game like that. So I'm actually really interested. That's one of my more keen non-conference watches of the ACC schedule. But it's definitely not easy once you get into the ACC. I think it's an uphill climb to get back to Charlotte. Not impossible, but a little bit more unlikely.
The Florida State Seminoles. What to expect out of them? How much pressure is on Mike Norvell this year? That's what I want to know. You go from undefeated to 2-10.
Yeah.
The highest of highs to the lowest of lows. I mean, it's literally indescribable. And I really, with the changes in personnel, have no idea what to expect. You bring in Thomas Castellanos at quarterback. You bring on Gus Malzahn, hired at offensive coordinator, which I do think is brilliant. You have 26 new players out of the transfer portal. Deuce Robinson, you bring in at wide receiver from USC. He's long, he's athletic. It reminds me of having guys like Kelvin Benjamin catching passes for the Seminoles, right? He kind of fits that body type, that Florida State receiver kind of aura. And that's Deuce Robinson. Squirrel White, a speedster from Tennessee. New defensive coordinator. I'm a big fan of this guy, Tony White. He comes from Nebraska. But before that, he was at Syracuse when Dino Babers was the head coach. And Tony White runs the 3-3-5. So Florida State's going to run this defense with an extra, they call it a rover defensive back, They're going to be fast on defense. They're going to bring different, interesting blitzes with, they're going to be a little smaller but more athletic. That's what the 3-3-5 brings to the table. And essentially you're going to have three guys up front as far as true defensive linemen go, but you're going to be blitzing these linebackers and safeties and corners. And it's fun to watch. It's a fun defensive package to run. That's what Tony White brings to the table. Saw success as the DC at Nebraska, saw success at Syracuse, put a handful of guys in the NFL. Andre Sisco being one of them in his time at Syracuse. Fatu Melifonwu put in the NFL. Like there's some names there, right? But Florida State has a very difficult schedule. So I guess long story short, I have no idea what to think of this team.
I mean, have you ever heard the saying that once you've hit rock bottom, you can only go up?
They're not going to go 2-10.
Exactly. That's the story for me, right? It's like they hit rock bottom a year ago. They went from the highest of highs, winning the conference championship, going 13-0 in 2023. And it's like when they announced that Alabama got in over them on ESPN the following day, it was like the Thanos snap and everything changed from there on out. They go 2-10, all of their best players left for the NFL, but they were still expected to run it back and win the conference. They wind up being an absolute joke. Just with all due respect, it was we were waiting every week. When is Florida State going to win? When is Florida State going to win? They lose to Georgia Tech in Ireland. They come home, lose to Boston College on Labor Day. Then they lost to Memphis, and then they finally beat Cal, and then the rest of the ACC beat up on them until they finally beat, I think it was like Abilene Christian in the second to last week of the season. So it's like, oh my gosh.
Take me back. We watched all those games at the Palace. I remember the Georgia Tech, the BC.
Oh my gosh. That Georgia Tech opener was special because that was like first college game day, first big game of the year, week 0. Those were
that Cup of Joe hit different that morning.
Oh my
that Cup of Joe hit different with college game day back.
I don't want to get sidetracked, but I'm pretty sure we went all out for the return of college football.
Oh, we did.
We
made
protein pancakes on the griddle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Pumpkin spice protein pancakes.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, those were the days. But when I look at Florida State, it just can't be any worse than it was last year. It can't be like it was last year. That's why they were like the girl that broke up with her toxic boyfriend and chops off all of her hair. And that was me, right? I shaved my head 6 months ago, so I don't want to single out anybody. That's literally me. They completely overhauled both sides of the ball. They've got, I believe, the most transfers of anybody in the Power 4, if not college football as a whole. But you really hit the nail on the head. I really like Squirrel White. I obviously really like Deuce Robinson as well. I think you obviously said it, like a big body guy. I even think of just a couple years ago, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson. They really want to throw the jump balls up to these guys. There's so much unknown that it's almost impossible to not have them just be middle of the pack. I think they can go as far as Thomas Castellanos takes them. He obviously thinks he can take them to the Super Bowl, let alone the college football playoff. And I think he needs to calm down a little bit for a guy who's just okay at a place like Boston College. But if he's able to put together a solid campaign, I think that they should be a 500 or slightly above 500 team. But just to go back to it, when you said what kind of pressure is Mike Norvell under, I think it's tremendous. I think if they finish below 500, he will not be the head coach anymore. But he's almost too expensive to get rid of. So if you're Florida State, you're in a pickle. And then you think you have this incredible home field advantage, but half the stadium's under renovation and 40,000 people can show up to any given game. So it's like nothing's going right for them. This could very easily be a season that's not as bad as it was last year in terms of embarrassment, but still bad to the point where they have to take a good, long, hard look in the mirror and say, you know what? Maybe a few more years until we join the SEC, because I think they could very easily be just as screwed as they were last year.
I'm with you there. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Panthers. Cade Bell, offensive coordinator, is back. He's there with Eli Holstein, second-year quarterback. Desmond Reed, their star tailback, is back. He's impressive because he's one of those all-around type guys. He can catch balls out of the backfield, but then he can still run it between the tackles and has that breakaway speed turning a corner on the outside. He really is an all-around type of running back for them, can do it all. Kyle Lewis, over 100 tackles last season, 16 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 4 interceptions, an impressive linebacker. They have a veteran secondary Started the season 7-0 last year and fell apart like we talked about. Finished 7-6 with a loss in the bowl game as well. Have to be better in the fourth quarter is my takeaway for Pittsburgh. 6 losses down the stretch of the season. In 4 of those 6 losses, they led or were tied. And those opportunities just evaporated. Have to be better in the fourth quarter. That is the story of Pat Narduzzi and the Panthers this year. I mean, I think you put the pieces together and you could have an impressive year, but if not, you're looking at Pitt. And what is Pitt's ceiling really outside of that Kenny Pickett COVID season? Like, this is always, we're going to get you to a bowl every year. We're not missing a bowl, but we're not winning 9. No. So it's like, you know.
And honestly, last year, they were lucky to win those 2 non-conference games to start the season against West Virginia and Cincinnati. Like, the only reason they beat West Virginia is because that pass hit the West Virginia receiver right between his palms, and it magically popped in the air and into the hands of the Pitt defender who took it back for a touchdown. Now, Pat Narduzzi's a heck of a coach. They're always going to be solid defensively, and more than anything, it's like they're just ball magnets in the secondary. We saw what happened against, like West Virginia last year, against a team like Syracuse last year, where they kind of come in bunches and they're very much able to cash in on turnovers when they get them. Eli Holstein is a stud. He reminds me a lot. I don't want to get carried away saying this, but from a frame and play style perspective, he reminds me a lot of Drake May at North Carolina, in the sense that he's big, but he's mobile and he's got a live arm and he's got a really nice deep ball as well. Not saying he is Drake May or is going to be Drake May, but that's kind of what I see when I watch Eli Holstein. I think Desmond Reed's an awesome back. Again, they have a very opportune defense. They return a lot of guys from last year. They like to stay in-house, and Heinz is not an easy place to play. Yes, that's Heinz Field, not Acrisure Stadium. I just think, to your point, like, it's all right. Pitt is the epitome, no pun intended, of mid in the ACC. So
sure,
I don't see anything crazy for them, but I'm really looking forward to watching a full, healthy season from Eli Holstein.
The Duke Blue Devils. This is a team that I can get behind.
Me too.
9-3 last year in the regular season. Manny Diaz, this guy can coach a ball club. They bring in Darian Mensah at quarterback, and I think it's a huge upgrade. I really do. Now, Malik Murphy had some moments last year. Remember, this is a guy that was super highly touted out of high school, ends up at Texas before transferring out to Duke, played last year for the Blue Devils. And let's not be disrespectful. They still won 9 games with Malik Murphy as their quarterback.
They were awesome last year.
They were a great team. Yeah. I actually think you upgrade.
I agree.
With Darian Mensah at quarterback, because he's so athletic and he offers this dual threat capability. Malik Murphy was a little bit more of a, feet in the ground pocket passer. You bring Mensah in, the Tulane transfer at quarterback. You're going to have a strong defense when your head coach is Manny Diaz. That's just their brand. Chandler Rivers is a fantastic lockdown corner. Terry Moore, a great safety. Trey Freeman, look out for him at linebacker. A game that I can't wait to see, Raza, is when Duke hosts Illinois early on in the season, because I think we're going to learn a lot about the Blue Devils when Luke Altmaier and Brett Bielema come to town.
Yeah, Illinois is a team that's probably going to be ranked in the top 15 to 20 coming into that game. That's another great opportunity for Duke to say, hey, the ACC is not to be messed around with. I absolutely agree with you on Darian Mensah. Of all of the transfer quarterbacks in the Atlantic Coast Conference, he's the one I'm most excited to watch. He headlines a class of transfers that's like surprisingly good for a school like Duke. Like, you can tell that Duke is starting to pour a lot more resources into their football program. They were like, yeah, what Mike Elko did in 23 was cool and all, but whatever. Then Manny Diaz comes and does pretty much the same thing in 2024. And they're like, oh, we might be able to work with this. And so I think they've put a lot of resources towards the football program. Darian Mensah has a chance to be really, really special. I think he's flashed a lot, obviously, albeit at the group of 5 level, but the kid's got potential that's through the roof. He's got a really, really live arm. I can't wait to watch him play. And I think you hit the nail on the head with the defense as well. Like, the ingredients are there for Duke to be a team to really make some noise this year. I think they have an outside shot to make the title game, but it's not, they're not in that top 5 necessarily, but they're right there. And I think if it all goes their way in a way it kind of did with SMU last year, they can very much have not have to leave the state of North Carolina in the first week of December.
Yeah, I like what Duke brings to the table, no doubt. My question is like, before we move on, Manny Diaz rips off another 9-win season, even 8-win season. Who comes knocking?
Yeah, I mean, the SEC could come calling. The problem is, like,
he had a shot at Miami when he
did. And so many times we've seen guys that excel at the smaller schools, but kind of flounder at the top level. Miami was not a great situation. But we saw how quickly Mike Elko got poached. Manny Diaz could certainly get the call if Auburn's looking for a new head coach at the end of this season.
True.
If a school like, Michigan State is looking for a new head coach at the end of the season, I think it's kind of an identity thing. I think Mike Elko was a great fit for Texas A&M. Obviously, they had ties there. And Manny Diaz had ties at Miami, but it didn't work out. But I think that it's very possible that somebody comes calling, and obviously you'd be a fool not to pick up the phone if the SEC comes calling. So we'll see. I think it's very much on the table, but I would love for him to stick around because Duke's a really fun team to watch these days.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's talk about the Virginia Tech Hokies.
Oh,
our
dear.
School. This is home. This is home.
This is home.
Brent Pry. I don't even know how warm the seat is because a lot goes into firing a coach that we don't even have to get into all of that. People have opinions in Blacksburg that sometimes you can't just fire a coach because there's other people in other places that also, so we'll see how all that plays out. But the seat is getting toasty for Brent. It is.
It's how on your car you have the heated seat and it's like 1, 2, or 3.
Sure. Yeah.
It's on a 2 right now. It's pretty cold outside, so the 3 is a little tempting. It's let's be honest. We're not going to sugarcoat it. There are numerous jobs on the line in Blacksburg this year, and that's a macro thing. So in the micro, in terms of the football aspect of it, you lose a ton of guys to the NFL from a team last year that was way too good to have gone 6-7. Obviously, Tech is now 1-12 and 1-score games under Brent Pry. I think I saw last year was the first time that they didn't lose a game by double digits since 2010, but they still lost 6 games in the regular season. Games that they shouldn't have lost. Really, they
beat Miami.
I guess they did. Let's be honest with ourselves.
We were there.
I just got to say, the last 15 minutes, the craziest press box environment I've ever been in. With all due respect to all of our colleagues who were there, that's the least professional press box I was in during the Hail Mary sequence because we all just did not know what the hell was going on. It was absolutely nuts, but that's a whole nother can of worms to be opened. I think Tech, despite losing a lot of talent, is still a pretty decently talented team. I gotta say, and the same thing applies last year and even the year before. Brent Pry really knows how to work the transfer portal. I really love what they brought in the backfield with Braden Bennett and Terrion Stewart. I think they're going to be apt replacements for what Tech had last year with Bashal Tootin. And Jeremiah Coney's still back there toeing the rock as well. So they've got a pretty good committee of running backs. I imagine Stewart will be the lead back there. I worry about the wide receiver room because they had so many guys last year. They had Jalen Lane was a 4th-round pick. Quan Felton was an NFL body. Steven Gosnell was an NFL body. Ali Jennings, for what it's worth, was an NFL body until, his career kind of went by the wayside down the stretch in Blacksburg. And having Kyron Drones back certainly helps. I think it's better than if Tech would have gone into the season with Pop Watson as their starting quarterback. Again, health plays a factor there, and the offensive line's not great. And even when Kyron is at his best, he's still a 12 touchdown, 8 interception kind of guy. Obviously, with huge rushing upside. What worries me about this Tech team is the defense, because last year was not good. And they did get rid of Chris Marv, and they did bring in Sam Cephas, who I think is a huge upgrade at that position, coming in from the NFL and has worked under really good coaches. He's the dude was just with Jonathan Gannon, who's one of the better defensive minds in the NFL. So I think they're going to bring in some very nice stuff into the defensive side of the ball in Blacksburg. It's just a matter of, can it all come together? Can they finally win a close game? Like, I think if Tech doesn't win like 7 or 8 games this year, which they haven't done since the Stone Age, it feels like, a lot of people are losing their jobs.
It's hard to disagree with that. I think because of the upgrades made at both coordinator positions.
Yes.
Brent Pry relieved Chris Marv of his duties as defensive coordinator. Tyler Bowen was still the offensive coordinator. I think it was a situation of you really could make a change at both, but you could only really afford to make one move. And a double move kind of fell into your lap. It was who's the lesser of two evils? Okay, we'll keep Tyler Bowen and get rid of Chris Marv. Then Tyler Bowen says, peace. I'm going to go join the defending national champions as an offensive line coach or tight ends coach. Which one?
Yeah, I think it's offensive line.
Offensive line coach. There you go. And great move for him. Pressure's off as a play caller. Get to go to Columbus. Good for Tyler Bowen. He got a pay raise. He got a pay raise to not call.
I got to tip my cap, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no doubt. And so you're sitting there scrambling because it's late in, coaching hire season, so to speak. Who the heck could they possibly hire? And one of the biggest things on everybody's wish list, so to speak, I think, including Brent Pry's, is we want somebody with experience, serious play calling experience. Because when Brent Pry formed his original staff, he's a first-time head coach. Hey, let me bring in a bunch of first-time coordinators as well, and let's just throw everything at the wall and figure out what sticks together. And you're 1-11 in one-score games, 3 years deep, right? And so I think with Philip Montgomery, the new offensive coordinator, you have exactly what you were looking for in somebody with serious experience. This guy was RG3's offensive coordinator at Baylor. He coached a Heisman Trophy winner. And it's not just like a flash in the pan either. He's had nation's #1 offenses year after year in his time as a coordinator at Baylor. He has experience as a head coach with some of the best offenses in the country as well. Like, this is his brand, is productive offenses, particularly when he has a quarterback that he likes. And it all comes full circle because he heavily recruited Kyron Drones coming out of high school. And now they meet up at Virginia Tech. He got the quarterback that was right, and there's a match there. I think that he can pull the best out of Kyron. I think Kyron's going to significantly benefit from having an experienced veteran play caller like that. And I think that, I don't want to say the sky's the limit, but I think if you can keep turning those one-score games the other way, you're looking at a 7-8 win football team. Because they were going to bowl games with all those one-score losses.
Right. Because they could beat up on the bad teams.
Right. Oh, they had no problem beating up on the bad teams.
No,
like
when
Boston College comes in on a Thursday night and they beat them by 4 touchdowns. Yeah.
Smacked them. I mean, Georgia Tech didn't score a touchdown.
Wake Forest and Pittsburgh couldn't score. Yeah, exactly.
So it's a matter of like you said, flipping the losses into wins. I kind of need to see it to believe it, because at the end of the day, Brent Pry is the guy wearing the headset, and so many of those decisions are on him. It's definitely good to have more experience in the coordinator rooms. I do like the hire of Philip Montgomery, but when you talk about these explosive, productive Baylor offenses, man, I was in elementary school when RG3 won the Heisman, and
That's
I was in middle school. I was in middle school when Bryce Petty was there throwing it around. So, like, it's been a long time. And I think that the marriage of Philip Montgomery and Kyron Drones is a potentially fruitful one. I just don't know if the rest of the offense is talented enough to keep up. The offensive line has some massive question marks, losing their best, probably their best player to the portal, and Braylon Moore, who went to LSU. And then the wide receiver room is definitely been downgraded, although I do like Donovan Green, who transferred over from Wake Forest. And who knows if a guy like Chance Wiggins, Aiden Green makes a jump now that they get playing time. And for what it's worth, I think Benji Gosnell is one of the better tight ends in the league. So the potential is there, but with the tough schedule, like I
don't find it as tough as you do. I find the non-conference tough. I don't find ACC play to be that unbearable. Let's while we're talking about it, pull it right up.
I mean,
it's South Carolina and Vanderbilt off the rip is unfortunate to say the least.
Right. But let's just get this out the way. All right. If Tech starts the year 0-2, Main Street will be set ablaze. Like the fact that Tech has still not beaten a non-conference power opponent since West Virginia on my 16th birthday. I'm turning 24 next month, Giovanni. My 16th birthday, they beat West Virginia and Landover, Maryland. That was 8 freaking years ago. They had every opportunity against Rutgers the last 2 years. They should have beaten Vanderbilt last year. I think South Carolina is going to have their way with them in Atlanta. If they're unable to come home and beat Vanderbilt, who they again should beat, even though they still have, they're not bad. Like they do still have Diego Pavia and Eli Stowers and a lot of talented players that beat them last year. Tech should still win that game. And if they don't, it's going to be absolute hell to play. I agree with you that the conference schedule is pretty easy. There's always a free win baked in the Saturday after Thanksgiving, but like going to Florida State could be tough. Louisville's not going to be easy. At Georgia Tech's not going to be easy. At NC State's not going to be easy. Like there's so many question marks here that I can't just say with confidence, like, yeah, I expect Tech to do X, Y, and Z in these games, because covering the program and being at the university, you kind of get this inherent sense of pessimism. Like you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop and for something to go wrong. And I'd love to be proven wrong. But last year I drank so much Kool-Aid that my cup is empty this year. So I need to see.
I went in very pessimistic until I started reading up on these transfers and just feeling like, okay, maybe there's something, and reading up on these coordinators.
It's a talented team.
I'm alarmed that they only return 2 defenders that started last year. But at the same time, I do think the defensive transfers they brought in, like Jonkum could be a dog. Bell
he's
could
a fun
be a dog,
player.
you know?
Yeah. Bell is an absolute unit, that's for sure. And then again, the returning starters, like, one of them is arguably the most important player on the field in Jaden Keller. Like, they're going to be in a position where the defense has experience where it counts. And I think these guys have been through the ringer in their time in Blacksburg. I think that can definitely play a factor.
How about last note on Virginia Tech? That offensive line, you hire Matt Moore from West Virginia.
That's
and
true.
He brings West Virginia's entire O-line with him, including probably future top 3-round pick in Thomas Remack.
Yep.
I mean, he's going to be huge at the guard spot. And then you brought more with him. You add on to what you already had. I actually think the offensive line could be a strength, which has not been the story in 10 years. Well,
right.
Actually,
when I said
less than that, they turned out that line in 2019, 2020. That was pretty elite. Christian Darrisaw.
Yeah. When I say the offensive line's a question mark, it's again like a situation where I need to see it to believe it. But they made all the right moves to make sure the offensive line isn't as rough as it was last year. But I mean, goodness, down the stretch last year, they couldn't run the ball. I mean, they couldn't do much at the end of last year. But I remember
they were all hurt though too.
Injuries completely plagued last year. Like last year was a Murphy's Law type of season for Virginia Tech. I remember being very, very rude to them in my columns after each of those losses down the stretch. So I'm hoping for better results this year, but I'm not. Again, my cup runneth over last year, and I'm leaving it there for now. You got to show me that I should go get some more Kool-Aid.
Valid. Let's talk about the Syracuse Orange.
Let's.
You know it, baby. Let's talk about the Syracuse Orange. Syracuse, a great 10-win season last year, 9-3 in the regular season. Big Holiday Bowl win over Washington State. Oh, it was beautiful. Kyle McCord was slinging it all over the place. Shattered the ACC single-season passing record, led the nation in passing. It all culminated with a season finale in the Dome against the Miami Hurricanes. Canes trying to go to the college football playoff and punch their ticket to the ACC championship. Syracuse, one of the top teams in the league, just trying to play spoiler and ruin the night for Miami. They do just that. Dude, I'll never forget. Down 21 We're getting ready to you're getting ready to write. I'm getting ready to call the Virginia Tech game, and down 21-0. I was like, well, this was fun. This is a good year. I'm glad this is how this is going to end. Cause I had circled that, and you had circled that since the beginning of the year. We were like, that.
And I told you they were going to win that game. I told you the whole season they were going to win that game.
And then you come back down 21-0. The Devin Grant scoop and score on the fumble. LaQuint Allen being a dog running out the clock. Kyle McCord literally out-dueling. Now, they both played fantastic, so I'm not taking anything away from Cam Ward. But statistically out-dueling Cam Ward in that game. McCord had 15 more yards and one more touchdown, whatever it was.
They went band for band.
Yeah, they went, but just awesome, epic, classic game. That's all over. That's done. That was last year because everybody's gone. You look at the offensive side of the football for Syracuse as far as what this team returns this year, and it's not much. 37% of offensive production is back this year. You got a quarterback battle. You feel good about it when you hear where these guys come from. You bring in Ricky Collins. He was one of the more sought-after guys out of the transfer portal at the quarterback position this past offseason. Former 4-star guy. They bring him in from LSU, and then they name him the starting quarterback after the spring. And all of a sudden, Steve Angeli from Notre Dame enters the portal after being told following the spring that he was going to be Notre Dame's third string. He enters the portal. They bring in Steve Angeli. Angeli's the only one that we have tape on. Ricky Collins threw attempted 5 passes at LSU. Angeli at least showed spurts, played in a big game against Penn State in the playoff, right? Like, he's been in there and taken some snaps because Riley Leonard was banged up, and you got to see what Angeli could do a little bit there. Some people believe it'll be Angeli. Some people believe it'll be Ricky Collins. Fran Brown said it's a 50-50 battle throughout fall camp. We'll see how it plays out. You lost Trevor Pena, wide receiver. He goes to Penn State. Probably bolsters what looks like a national championship contending team in Happy Valley. And you lost a lot on defense. Most of it was the fact that there was a senior-laden team. You brought in Fadil Diggs for 1 year. You brought in Kyle McCord for 1 year. You brought in Jackson Meeks for 1 year. You had Aronde Gadsden around for 1 more year. Those guys are all going to have their shot, at the NFL. They're saying Aronde Gadsden's going to be the starting tight end maybe for the Los Angeles Chargers. You lay in the fact that a lot of this team's new, and on top of it, they have arguably, I'll say it's in the top 5 toughest schedules in the country.
It's insanity.
Yeah. It's a ruthless schedule for the Syracuse Orange this year. Tennessee to open it up in Atlanta, which, by the way, I'm so heartbroken that I'm probably not going to find a way to Atlanta because Virginia Tech and Tennessee are going to play back-to-back days against SEC opponents at Mercedes-Benz. I mean, when is that ever going to happen again? Probably never.
Literally never.
UConn, Colgate, those should be dubs. Then you go to Clemson. Then you host Duke. We just talked about how good Duke's going to be. Then you go to SMU. You play Pittsburgh at home. You go to Georgia Tech. You host North Carolina. You go to Miami.
That's insane.
Non-conference, you go to Notre Dame. And then you play Boston College to cap it off. Dude, what the heck?
It's insane.
Who did Fran Brown upset?
Somebody in the football heavens, Fran Brown was like, they were like, you know what? You should shower more often. Here's a schedule to humble you. You want to stink for the rest of this fall? Try winning against this schedule. But I mean, because winners do get washed. I mean, SU. Listen, last year I was extremely skeptical because it was so much unknown. And then SU just comes out and they're like, nah, dude, Fran Brown can coach his butt off and he can make it work with these transfers. Like, SU had more success their first season with all their transfers than Colorado did in their first season. Now, granted, they were in a literally the greatest year the Pac-12 has ever seen back in 2023. So I want to give it a little bit of a grain of salt. But that was a marquee win over Miami, and Syracuse had a really gritty comeback win against Virginia Tech. They had a great comeback win against Georgia Tech. They had a very good win against NC State. The Pitt game was a bit of a disaster for them, but listen, they went 10-3. You can't fault anything that happened to Syracuse last year. That was probably the best season they've had this century, you could argue. But the point is that Fran has proven he can make it work with these 1-year rentals, with these transfers. Looking at what they have, I like their receiver room. Honestly, the room I kind of gravitate towards is their defensive back room. I think that the guys they still have, somehow Deuce Chestnut's still playing college football. They have some guys back there that are experienced that they did have last year. And at times they were susceptible to the big play last year. I think that will maybe not be the case this year. At least should be better now that they've got some more experience under their belt. This Demetrius Samuel kid, can you tell me about him? Because I think he could be one of the most electric freshmen that we have in the country.
A little bit of a Travis Hunter-esque vibe to him. Going to play two ways. I think he's going to play a lot more corner than receiver, just the stuff I've seen about camp and the stuff I've read. But just a freak athlete. Like, he's going to play. As a true freshman, he's going to play a lot.
Yeah, he can't not play, essentially.
And it's not just him too, dude. They brought in Jonte Cook, wide receiver from Texas. They've bolstered in the trenches. Like, growing up, Syracuse football looked different. They looked small, and then they'd play with the big boys and they would get thrown around. And no, Fran Brown does not, he's bringing in bodies that are 6'7", 380 pounds. You know what I mean? He's bringing in
the guys he had at Georgia.
Right. So it just looks different. It really does. It looks different, I think, is the best way to put it.
I agree. And he's bringing them not necessarily into a state of national prominence, but to a state of respect. And I think that is that's something that Syracuse has lacked for a really long time. Let's be honest. So I think my only question is, if by some grace of God, considering the schedule, Syracuse winds up a 9-win football team again, the same thing we talked about with Duke, does somebody pick up the phone and say, listen, college football is going in this direction, that all these transfers are coming into all these places, making instant impacts like we saw with Dion, and now we're seeing with Fran. If the SEC comes calling, you don't think Fran will go back to the SEC? I know he said he wants to stay forever, but a lot of people say a lot of things.
I know. It keeps me up at night, buddy.
It's a real possibility. It's a real possibility.
But the only argument I have to that, and I don't know if there's validity to it, I hear you. Has Fran done anything like anybody else does?
Yeah, he's a very unique character.
So it wouldn't shock you quite the same if he stayed true. I don't know. I mean, Syracuse would have to compensate him handsomely.
Yes. And I just I've kind of learned, we had a situation like this play out at Virginia Tech, right? Where, we saw it twice. Once right before we got there and then once while we were there. As good as a thing is going in a place that's smaller, when the big dogs come calling, sometimes you got to pick up the phone. And it's all speculative because I don't think Syracuse will have the season they had last year. But if somebody were to pick up the phone, it would be hard to say no. So we'll see.
I agree with you. Over under win total for Syracuse set at 5.5. I have them going 7-5. And, I've read some stuff like Phil Steele, big name in the college football industry. He thinks that's one of the better bargains in the betting world for over under win totals because he sees Syracuse getting that 6-7 win mark. I think 6-6, if you go games you should win, games you should lose, 6-6 is what it looks like.
I agree.
Right? I think you pull one upset. I just think Fran and and I know that's hard. It's the Fran effect, man. It's the Fran effect. I think you pull off an upset. And I think the upset you pull off is the Tennessee game. Because they have question marks. This isn't Nico Iamaleava's show.
No.
And learn how to say his name because that's job number one if you're gonna be in this industry is say names.
Correct.
Nico Iamaleava.
You nailed it.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks, buddy. We take pride in that. We've been taught
Yes,
right.
we do.
But this isn't the Nico Iamaleava show, right?
Mm-mm.
They have question marks at quarterback. They're going to be great on defense. They're going to be able to run the ball. I get that. Josh Heupel's a phenomenal coach. They're going to figure it out. When can you catch people at their most vulnerable? Week 1, when there's no tape and like they don't know what to expect either. Like respectfully, like there's no tape on Ricky Collins or not much on Steve Angeli for that matter. Like,
yeah, for me, it's a matter of like, does talent balance it out?
Sure. I'm sure talent does balance it out, but I'm just saying you look at this schedule. If there's any opportunity to get one and get one of those upsets, I think week 1 is the most likely place, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be like a Tennessee home game, but like, okay, also the other point to that is like they're going to Notre Dame. They're going to Miami. They're going to Clemson. They're going to Georgia Tech. This is a neutral site. Is there going to be a lot more Tennessee fans than Syracuse fans? Yes.
Absolutely.
But it's neutral.
That's why I think if you put a gun to my head and ask me to pick an upset, it would be at Miami. Like they beat Miami last year, albeit under extremely different circumstances. It's not a difficult place to play. We don't know what Miami is going to look like at that point in the season. I think Tennessee is, I don't know what the line is on that game right now. It's probably in the double digits. If it's not, it's maybe closer to 8 or 9.
Look it up.
But I would definitely hesitate to say that is where I would pick the upset. Although the point of there being so much unknown on both sides for both programs is definitely one that holds a lot of merit, because this was a very, no pun intended, rocky offseason for Tennessee. So we don't know what week 1 could be like. Is there a chance Tennessee is like Florida State was last year? Probably not, but anything is possible.
What do you think the narrative is on Cuse if they beat Tennessee week 1? Unfortunately, you play Clemson 2 weeks later, so the hype evaporates.
It's probably like, can you do it again? Like, can you, because you
14 and a half.
Yeah, that's a pretty big number. Like, can you do it again? Can you beat a Miami? Can you somehow beat a Clemson? Maybe can you beat a Georgia Tech? Like, I think that is maybe where you try to punch, because Tennessee's not on the level of Miami, Notre Dame, or Clemson, in my opinion. So maybe it's like, can you beat Georgia Tech? Can you somehow get back to the 9-win mark? Because then it's like, okay, we thought the schedule was very tough, but if you can make your way, you can make it work with it. Then we'll see. But honestly, the narrative might be, what program is going after Fran Brown in 2 months?
Fair. All right. Let's move on from Syracuse. Let's start going rapid fire because, buddy, we are going on 2 hours here. We're at an hour and a half, and I think we got to find a way to condense these going forward.
I agree. But sometimes, this is a situation where there's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about. Let's talk about the North Carolina Tar Heels. Bill Belichick, 6-time Super Bowl winner.
Let's go fast. Let's go to the number 1 story in the conference.
We know nothing. We know nothing about their personnel. They're overhauled on defense completely. His son Steven's going to be the defensive coordinator. On the offensive side, you lose Omarion Hampton at running back. You lose Tez Walker at wide receiver. I think Kobe Paysor could actually have a great year if the right person's throwing him the football. He could be their anchor as a pass catcher. Remember, he missed all of last season with an injury. He'll be back for him in the wide receiver room. The offensive line really actually does return quite a bit. Who's the quarterback? You going Gio Lopez from South Alabama or Max Johnson, who got hurt week 1? I think it's Gio Lopez, but that's just because his name is dope.
It's a pretty dope name, and I think you can relate, obviously. I think it will be Max because he feels more like a Belichick quarterback.
Fair.
But dude, we don't know.
Very fair.
We don't know our left from our right when it comes to North Carolina. There's so much that could happen, that could not happen. I remember after he was hired, we went down to the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte, and I asked so many people that were there that either covered the ACC at large or covered North Carolina specifically, what do you make of this? And the overwhelming answer was a disaster waiting to happen. I think the Belichick hire was a very desperate move by a very desperate program that's for some reason trying to become a football powerhouse, even though we know they're not going to be a football powerhouse. And then Belichick comes with his own set of weird things happening off the field, and it's like, so many distractions, so much hoopla. I don't see it working out. It could be a similar situation to what we saw with Dion 2 years ago, where like, okay, we just beat TCU in week 1 in front of a national audience. Funny how TCU always finds itself in this position. We just beat TCU week 1 in front of a national audience. Maybe we're going to be good this year, and they wind up winning like 4 games. The only thing I can hang my hat on is that Bill Belichick at the end of the day. And they've completely overhauled their defense. And if Belichick can get the most out of the guys that he brought in, awesome. And Lombardi is their general manager. So like these are guys with NFL experience. They want to be an NFL factory or like an
which
NFL
I
program
like
at the college level.
I like that.
Which could
that
either
should help in recruiting.
work. It could either work or it could be a disaster. And so I just don't know.
I understand why Carolina bit at that philosophy. I just don't know if he's going to be there long enough to see it play out. Their schedule isn't terribly daunting. I mean,
it's actually really easy.
You could make some noise week 1 against TCU, which don't forget, like TCU is kind of back. Like they stumbled the year after they got destroyed by Georgia in the national championship. Last year they went 9-4 when it was all said and done after the bowl game. Like they were kind of back into form a little bit. Carolina's going to play Clemson, and then they're going to avoid Georgia Tech, avoid Miami, avoid Louisville, no Florida State, no SMU. You pretty much play Clemson and the bottom of the ACC.
It's manageable.
They play Syracuse. That's a loss.
It's
Orange.
It's manageable. In the same way Florida State was manageable last year. It's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And
I don't know.
I honestly feel like it's a disaster waiting to happen. I hope it's not, because I'm not rooting against anybody in this story. I just think there's so much weird stuff happening at Carolina right now. I can't sit here and comfortably say, yep, that team's going to win 8 games. I think it's 5-7, 6-6 waiting to happen. Because I also think that the roster is not much to look at.
Yeah.
So
I have them at 6-6. Yeah. That's a bowl game under Belichick. Like I think you take that.
Bill
Belichick
talk Boston College. Fenway Park. Yeah, speaking of Boston.
Yeah. Boston College. I think Bill O'Brien's a good coach.
Personally. He's a hell of a coach. I think
he's a heck of a coach.
Yeah, pound for pound, one of the best coaches in the ACC. I mean, last year was kind of meh, but when you talk about getting blood from a stone, exactly. When you talk about getting blood from a stone, nobody does it like Bill O'Brien does in the ACC.
He won 7 games last year, and now he's going to have really his own personnel in there. Like Thomas Castellanos was not his handpicked quarterback.
No,
completely different styles, and you saw that play out. You saw their heads butting to the point where he said, "I'm hurt. Peace."
Yep. He got there so late, he really didn't have the opportunity that like Belichick did, for example, to make it work with.
He was about to be the offensive coordinator for the Buckeyes, and then look how all that played out.
Crazy.
And it took the right thing to pull him too. Like his wife has ties at BC and everything. Like that's why they ended up there. He loves it there. You got a quarterback battle going on with the Eagles. Grayson James, 6 starts last year when Castellanos was out. And then you got Dylan Lonergan, transfers in from Alabama. Who's winning that job?
I probably give the edge to the incumbent. Just to have half a season in the system, I think is a really big role. Plays a really big factor.
But do you bring in a transfer quarterback from Alabama if he's not going to play?
Well, you bring him in for competition. You bring him in for the potential of playing. But at least to start week 1, I think it just makes sense to give the hand to the guy with the experience. Either way, the offense isn't much to look at. I think Turbo Richard's pretty good back. Also one of the best names in the ACC. I think the rest of the roster
they lose Kai Robichaux.
Yeah, Robishaw's gone. So Richard becomes the main guy in that offense. They don't have the receivers that they used to have. I mean, their defense was getting pushed around last year by everybody that they faced. For them to have gone, 7-6 last year was like miraculous. So I think the roster is a little bit worse than it was last year. I don't know.
The one thing, surprisingly, they were really good against was they were pretty good on third down last year. Weirdly enough, they ranked pretty high in the ACC on third down. This feels like a team to me that's going to be very competitive, and it's not going to show in their record.
That's a good way of putting it. I think like
they're going to be in a lot of games.
Exactly, but they're not going to make a bowl game this year, in my opinion.
Right. Let's talk the Virginia Cavaliers. Make or break here for Tony Elliott. You add Chandler
100%.
Morris at quarterback. He's a very solid dual threat. Started his career at Oklahoma, which was like pre-COVID. Spent 3 years at TCU before playing this past season at North Texas. Defensive line completely overhauled for UVA. Experience, safety depth. That's something to be on the lookout for. Like, this is a Virginia safety group that's been together with some cohesion. Solid linebacking group for UVA. The biggest thing that stands out to me when you're talking the Wahoos, very manageable schedule. Very 100%. Manageable schedule. Much like North Carolina, they avoid a lot. They don't play Clemson. They don't play Miami. They don't play SMU. And they don't play Georgia Tech. That's a lot of the teams in the thick of the top.
Yeah, honestly, UVA's had a run of having pretty good DBs. They did just lose Sanker to the NFL, but Chandler Morris is an instant upgrade at quarterback. They're talking about a guy who's experienced and can make plays. He's been playing college football since I was, soiling my swaddling clothes at this point. So
Calandria landed at UNLV, right?
I actually don't know. Once he left,
I'm pretty sure he's Dan Mullen's guy at UNLV.
Well,
but continue. I'm sorry.
Regardless, we're wishing you all the best.
It is UNLV. It is
for all the what that you talk towards Virginia Tech. And we're unable to back it up twice. But yeah, Morris is a solid
little brother.
And the schedule is really easy. I'm very fearful that they're going to beat Virginia Tech, but anytime you think maybe this is the year that Tech loses, it never happens. Like death taxes and Tech beating UVA. So I think
once they went to the ACC title game,
and they still talk about it.
Bryce Perkins,
yeah, he's a dog. I mean, that was a solid UVA team. Shout out to Bryce Perkins, who won the UFL MVP this year. I bet you didn't know that.
Let's give it up for Bronco Mendenhall.
So I don't think UVA is a bowl team this year like they were last year. I don't see 6 wins on the schedule, despite it being easy. I think they're a 5-7 football team, and I just don't think Tony Elliott lives to see another year in Charlottesville, which is unfortunate because I thought he was a good hire for them in the moment, and it's just a shame it hasn't worked out. But I also think he might have been a little overrated from his time at Clemson. And in retrospect, it's like, okay, the success they had on offense had a lot less to do with him and a lot more to do with the talent that they had.
I was kind of surprised it hasn't worked out as well. I thought at the time Tony Elliott was a great hire. Cal, it's a name of who's out west. We're going to talk about Stanford, and we're talking about Cal right now. Ron Rivera's on the staff. And a lot of people probably don't even know that. He's helping out Justin Wilcox, who's in his 9th season, which also is surprising. New offensive coordinator as well, Brian Harsin. He's a former head coach at Auburn and Boise State. Like, this is a guy that's had some titles. He's the new offensive coordinator. California brings in 36 new players this year.
It's insane.
Like, it's insane. They lost a ton of their guys to the portal. Notably, Jaden Ott goes to Oklahoma. Lost all 5 starting defensive backs. In their defense, 3 of them were drafted in the NFL. So good problems to have, no doubt about it. Who's going to play quarterback? I think it's going to be Devin Brown, transfer from Ohio State, but not everybody agrees on that. And to me, this just feels like a rebuild year for Cal. Nothing crazy hard on the schedule, but just feels like when you bring in 36 new guys, like you're just throwing something and hoping it sticks.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything I saw from the Pac-12 days, it's like Justin Wilcox can literally coach anybody to 6 wins. Like if you I'm pretty sure if you were to go pull up like Cal program history, they went 6-7 like 5 years in a row because they just got the sixth win. They beat Stanford the last week of the year, and then they would lose their bowl game like every single time. Very possible this year, but it's so much new and so much unknown. And Devin Brown has talent, but it never really materialized at Ohio State. Maybe that was a power, not a power four, but like a Big Ten thing. And playing on that stage can definitely have an effect on people. But like anytime I remember watching him play in a Cotton Bowl against Missouri, and I was like, wow, this is no bueno. But I do want to give a shout out to Devin Brown, who wears the number 33 at quarterback to honor Sammy Baugh. That's really cool. That being said, no aura. There's no aura in the reality of wearing 33, but the idea of it is fantastic. So Cal's probably finishing in the bottom 3 this year just because there's so much unknown. But Devin Brown has talent, man. So like if he flashes, it would be a situation where I'm like, okay, I probably could have seen that happening. I don't really see it happening.
Stanford, that's a who's who. You can call it a front office at this point.
Yeah, you can, dude.
Stanford, 4 consecutive 3-9 seasons. They're trying to break out of that dizzy spell. Lots of big names in the building. Frank Reich is the interim head coach. I've never seen an interim head coach to start the season. I mean,
me neither.
It's weird.
I'm like, why does he have that title?
My favorite Frank. This is a man that's been an NFL head coach, but my favorite. Well, I shouldn't say Frank Reich memory because I wasn't actually around, but that man engineered one of the greatest comebacks in the history of the National Football League, if not the greatest comeback in the history of the National Football League. Buffalo Bills, Houston Oilers in a snowy Orchard Park, New York.
Were they not the Tennessee Titans then? No, that was the Music City Miracle. Yeah, the Music City Miracle, they were the Titans.
Yeah, no, it was the Oilers. And Bills come back, go to the Super Bowl.
Still the biggest comeback in playoff history, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Electric. That's what I think of when I think Frank Reich. Still a lot of experience, NFL head coach. Andrew Luck, of course, Stanford alum, is the general manager, which is crazy. We're talking that with college football.
I know.
Who's going to play quarterback for these guys? Elijah Brown, he's a former 4-star. Dylan Rizek comes from UCF. Like, I don't know. That's another quarterback battle across the conference. You lose Alec Iomanner to the NFL. He was such a dog.
He was.
Sam Roush, I think he's going to be a very solid tight end for them. You got to improve on defense, though. Second worst in FBS in yards allowed on defense. Gave up almost 38 points a game last season. Woof.
Yeah.
It still beat Syracuse. Syracuse would have gone to the playoff.
That was nuts. I cannot believe that game got away from Syracuse early in the year. I saw, obviously, Stanford play when Tech played out there last year. So if nothing else, Stanford, your campus is beautiful. I already knew that. And your stadium's pretty cool. I really like the trees, the way it's got this like environment to it. The AC, the press box could use some AC for sure. Of course, by the way, just our luck. We went to like the hottest game in the history of Stanford Stadium.
Right. And it was like October.
The 1 week in Stanford where it's not 60 degrees every single day. It's 95 degrees. If anything, I do think Elijah Brown will be the starting quarterback, and he's definitely got some juice. I think if anything, Andrew Luck and Frank Reich have the collective acumen to turn things around. I don't know how long Reich's going to be in the program, but when I look at Andrew Luck, dude, he's like a freaking businessman. He's incredible. Like I love Andrew Luck, honestly, with all my life. I was so sad when he retired. I'm glad he's getting back into football in this managerial standpoint because he could literally run for president and win. So I am excited to see what they do. This year is not going to be it, though. And Stanford's a place where, listen, I remember growing up, Stanford was in the Rose Bowl every year. You know, I remember Andrew Luck. I remember Christian McCaffrey. I remember Kevin Hogan. I remember all these big names that came through. And I hope they get back to it. It would be great for the ACC. Yeah, I mean, it would be great if they got back to that. It would be great for the ACC. This year isn't going to be the year, but there'll be an interesting watch for sure, just because of that tandem that's now running the program for who knows how long.
The right people are there. I agree. Let's let's talk to Wake Forest Demon Deacons to round us out. Dave Clawson, that era is over. Jake Dickert, the new head coach in Winston-Salem. He was pretty good at Washington State with his short stint there. Brought in offensive coordinator Rob Ezell from South Alabama. They're going to bring a up-tempo based aggressive offense. So the slow mesh is history. Damon Claiborne is back at running back, had 1,000-yard year last year. Ton of roster turnover, very low expectations. I just don't see Wake putting many wins on the schedule. This year, I have them finishing second to last in the ACC.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing about Wake that I can say is like a positive, at least or a positive outlook, is I really like Robbie Ashford in the sense that he's got a really live arm. I remember when he was recruited to Oregon out of high school, he was like a two-way player in the same way that like Kyler Murray was. He comes from a baseball background. So he's got this arm that can make these weird angle throws. He's definitely got a good deep ball. They have nothing else to work with. Obviously they have a good back, but I just think their passing game is it's going to be so lackluster. And the problem with a guy like Ashford is, I say this so many times, and this is about good quarterbacks, it's about bad quarterbacks, about guys who are still figuring it out. When you know you can make any throw, you think you can make every throw.
Fair.
Robbie Ashford's that type of quarterback, and I think that spells out like a 15 touchdown, 10 interception season. I don't think Wake will finish dead last. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I think they were picked to finish last. They're definitely in that bottom tier. The upside is potentially there, but maybe not in year one of a new regime.
We forgot to talk about NC State. And
holy smokes.
And I think that they could actually be a sleeper in this league. Last year felt very un-Dave Doran-like. And CJ Bailey, I think, could take some big strides and big steps in the right direction this year. It feels like NC State hasn't had a returner at quarterback in a hot minute, and they actually get that this year with CJ Bailey. They're also going to return 6 of their top 7 receivers from last year in leading receiving. Justin Jolie, I think he's a dog at tight end. He's preseason All-ACC. Hollywood Smothers is back at running back. New defensive coordinator, DJ Elliott. 7 starters return on the defensive side of the ball, including their tackles leader and Sean Brown. Can they put the pieces together and start picking up some more wins? Because you look at how much they bring back. You bring in a new defensive coordinator, some consistency. Sometimes it just takes some consistency. Does Dave Doran have this team back to a 8-9 win caliber program?
Maybe not with the current.
I don't know about all that
they have. Yeah, like CJ Bailey has high upside, but we still need to see it.
Sure.
I think Noah Rogers could still be a really good wide receiver 1 for them, but we still need to see it. What stands out to me about NC State is that their defense, which was kind of lackluster last year, returns like pretty much everybody. It's a very in-house unit. They're very experienced more than anything else. And like on defense in particular, I think experience can play such a factor when you have a program that's as well coached as NC State typically is. So if CJ Bailey turns into like a top 7-ish quarterback in the league, and if Noah Rogers can become the guy that they brought him in to be last year, which we didn't really see last year, upside is definitely 7 or 8 wins for NC State. It's just like, it's kind of hard to see them get there. I actually have them at 7 wins just because I like what they have going on. NC State's been so solid for so long, and so many of their key matchups are at home, and I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt in that scenario. So 7 wins definitely on the table for NC State. I actually think they could open some eyes this year.
I have NC State going 6-6. I have them going 6-6, but I agree with you. I think that there is definitely room for fluctuation there. Let's wrap this up today by talking 2 things very briefly as well, because let's cut it off at the 2-hour mark, no later. Very briefly, I want to know who you got for ACC Player of the Year. Who's your dark horse in the ACC that could make some noise? And who are your serious playoff contenders in the ACC? Start with your player of the year.
Sure. I would say my player of the year would just have to be Cade Klubnik. I'll just go chalk. Just because I think the production's going to be there, and then they're obviously undefeated season or maybe a one-loss season at worst is going to be there as well. Dark horse, like I wouldn't consider Georgia Tech to be a dark horse. Duke is maybe a dark horse, maybe not. But honestly, I would go Pitt because I think they have the highest upside with quarterback play of the teams outside the top 5 or 6. Like I said, I'm big on Eli Holstein. If he can stay healthy and they can figure it out on that side of the ball, they could definitely make some noise. And the third question was, how many legit contenders
are serious playoff contenders?
I would say like Clemson's a lock, even if they don't win the conference. I would probably say Miami, Georgia Tech, and Louisville are the other 3 I would look at. And SMU. I think SMU, if they're able to repeat what happened last year, teams like Duke and even Florida State have an outside shot. But again, it's really, there's a clear-cut top 5. And so I would say that goes to all of those guys.
I like it. I think my ACC player of the year, it's hard to say it's not Cade Klubnik. So I'm going to go Cade Klubnik. I do think that if there are guys that could certainly be in the mix or make some noise, Carson Beck, you'd have to look at. I don't know what it's going to look like at Miami, but the upside of the best Carson Beck that we've seen, 2023 Carson Beck, that looks like a person that could win ACC player of the year. I also think you got to look at Miller Moss maybe for being in that conversation. Feels like it's a quarterback award, but maybe if Jamal Haynes has an unbelievable season or Isaac Brown has an unbelievable season, you could see one of those two
Eric
guys
Rivers.
having their name in the pot. Yeah, or Eric Rivers. Although if you're talking receivers, I think it's Antonio Williams, but who's throwing him the football? You know what I'm saying? Is it at that rate? So it's tough. Dark horses. I'm going to go Virginia Tech. My dark.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to go Virginia Tech.
I'm stunned.
I really think that this is desperation mode for Brent Pry. You know it's always going to be a tough place to play. I think if you could pick up some momentum and go 1-1 in the first 2, the ACC schedule doesn't destroy you. Like last peek at the ACC schedule, your toughest game on the road is probably at Florida State or at Georgia Tech, but we just talked about Florida State not having their environment and what is Florida State. So probably at Georgia Tech. And your toughest game at home is going to be hosting Miami. I think that there's opportunity with the schedule, if they can stay healthy, to make some noise with the new offensive coordinator and Philip Montgomery and whatnot. So I'm going to pick them as my dark horse. And then my legitimate college football playoff contenders. I don't think the ACC is getting more than 2. I just think that's where we're at. So
2 would be a success.
So I think it's hard to make this tier of 5. I think there is a clear 1.
Yeah, Clemson was my clear 1, and the other 4 are in a tier 2.
I think I'm taking SMU out of that. I might regret that, but I think the schedule this year is much more difficult. I'm not fully sold. I think it takes time to build up in the trenches to compete at that level. You saw that against Penn State. I don't think SMU's in that mix. I think it's Louisville, Miami, Georgia Tech, and then Clemson. I think it's 4. I think it's a 4-horse race right now. Kevin Jennings might have other things to say about that. But there's part of me that would actually be more confident in Duke being in that conversation than SMU.
You never know. I mean, with that defense, and again, if Darian Mensa becomes the guy, he can be the guy in this league. Like, if there's a chance he enters next year as the best quarterback in the league, there's a chance. So, but if Syracuse beats Tennessee, I'm calling a 10-win season off the rip. Forget that. It's 15-0 national champs.
Yeah. There we go. All right, brother. This has been a blast.
It has been.
Let's shorten it up next time.
Let's never do this again.
Cooking. Yeah, no doubt. All right. Final words before we wrap it up. ACC is going to be fun. I think that's the best thing.
I love the ACC. It's always a blast. I hope that Virginia Tech proves me wrong this year. I hope it's closer to your prediction than mine. Regardless, should be fun. Week 1's going to be a blast throughout college football, but the ACC is at the forefront of so many of those matchups. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be unpredictable as always. And I hope I can find myself at a couple of these games this year, and I can't wait to see it play out.
As always, check us out on social media. You can find it at Got It Covered FB, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, wherever you get your social media contact. Go ahead and check it out. For Raza Umerani, I'm Giovanni Heater saying so long, and we'll talk to you next time on GIC.